Let's say that this is Armenia, and this is the Ottoman Empire, and this is Russia. Armenia didn't want to be part of the Ottoman Empire anymore. They wanted to leave. So they tried to get Russia to be compliant with them, to ally with them, to help them get out of the Ottoman Empire, because they're both Christian states. They will Christians, we help each other, so Ottoman Empire didn't want that. They didn't want the Armenians leaving. They would have rather had them die than leave. So they did what any normal empire would have done at that time. They tried to destroy the entire Armenian race, almost to the point of extinction. Now you may be wondering, who could possibly be behind this atrocity? Well, it was none other than these three guys right here. I would like to formally introduce you to Talat Pasha, Enver Pasha, and Jamal Pasha. And they all were the leaders of the Committee of Union and Progress. The Committee of Union and Progress, and they started the Armenian Genocide. Talat Pasha was the Minister of the Interior, Enver was the Minister of War, and Jamal was the Minister of the Navy. Talat later became the Grand Vizier, though. During World War I, though, Enver started making more of the executive decisions, I'd say, mostly because he was the Minister of War after all. This was his go-to area of expertise, or so they thought. He started leading the Committee of Union and Progress, or CUP, if you will, or the Young Turks. The Young Turks is also another very popular way to call the Committee of Union and Progress, and this is very important to note, because this is how Enver started instilling nationalism into the people of the Ottoman Empire, saying that that Ottoman Empire is for the Turks. And this is one of the reasons why the Armenians started being very hated by the Ottomans. Mr. Talat over here, he was the Minister of the Interior, and he is the one that sent the order to arrest and deport the Armenians from their home and from everywhere they could be found in Turkey too. He is the one that the Armenians learned to hate the most later on in their lives. He is widely considered as the biggest perpetrator of the Armenian genocide to this date. Then there's Jamal, but he didn't really do anything. He kind of just went along with the idea, and he's not very important in the Armenian genocide, really. So I said that Talat made the order to deport all of the Armenians. Well, what I mean by deport, they didn't get into like boxcars or anything. They kind of walked. They made the Armenians walk into these big death marches into the Syrian desert and other places, but this is the map of where they took the Armenians to be killed, or they died along the way. Either way, it was still pretty bad. Most Armenians, they died from starvation or thirst or just heat stroke or something like that. For being in the desert for so long without food or water, it's kind of hard to not die. These big death marches were led by gendarmes. I think that's how you pronounce it. The gendarmes were supposed to be quote-unquote guards, but they let bandits and criminals, they let them kill and rape the Armenians in the death marches. They let them steal from the Armenians. It's they're not doing their job very well if they're supposed to be guards. And oh boy, that's not even the worst part. The worst part is, when they got to their concentration camp, if they were still alive, they were subjected to drownings or being poisoned or being even gassed. That sounds like a kind of popular certain someone in history. That's right, Adolf Hitler himself took some ideas for the Holocaust from the Armenian genocide. I find it really funny how the men in history that always have the most stylish mustaches are also the ones that have killed countless of people. Everything was so terrible that even Germany, the Ottoman Empire's allies, got worried for the Armenians. For example, the German consul in Adana in that time said, with its barbaric methods, the government is obviously damaging the interest of the nation. In particular, the Deutsche Orient Bank, or the German Orient Bank, has suffered considerable damage and has asked me to put a stop to the deportation of the Armenians. I mean, yeah, Germany seems more worried about their sake, but like, how can they not be when their allies are literally killing a whole race of people? Now, it wasn't long before word got out from reporters, reporting about this stuff. So there were people that did, attempt to help the Armenians, and a lot of them succeeded with saving a couple of hundreds out of the million Armenians that were killed. 1.5 million were killed. That's a lot, but they were able to save just a little over 100. A lot of Protestant missionaries tried helping out the Armenians, and also one Armenian states that Consul Davis helped her and her mother escape the deportation. They both lived in the consulate to 1922, along with 250 other Armenian orphans that Consul Davis saved. There were even some cases of Turkish families taking in Armenian orphans, but the only downside, I guess, for the Armenians were that they had to convert into Islam. And if you're really devout, it's really hard to jump from one faith into another, especially around that time where a lot of people were devout. Then it finally happened. Despite the Ottoman Empire's best efforts to get rid of all of the Armenians, they still survived. They ended up acquiring weapons and they fought back in these little revolutions against the Turkish government, but then after a while they finally won. They finally beat the Turks at the Battle of Sadrabad. And after World War I, the Ottoman Empire wasn't very much of an empire anymore. Also, the three pashas, remember them? Well, they were all assassinated after World War I. It was a kind of an unclean justice, but justice is justice. And around 1920, the Allied powers tried to help the Armenians get some of their old historic land back from Turkey, and the new leader was happy to comply, actually. And when I mean was, I mean was, because then they got a new leader that was all about nationalism, and they're like, we're not giving Armenia any of this land. We're not signing this treaty. They can go take a hike back to Armenia. It only got worse from there, because Turkey tried to get rid of everything that has to do with Armenia and its history in Turkey, and they even tried to take some of Armenian land for themselves, more land from Armenia. They tried to take more from them, and they were burning their libraries, getting rid of all their history. Armenia wasn't very happy, as you can probably tell. Heck, probably the only reason why their country still exists to this day is because when all this stuff was happening, Armenia decided to join the Soviet Union. Since big boy Russia can protect this little country. And today, after all of this time, they still have not found a compromise. Armenia is still very angry at Turkey, and Turkey is still very angry at Armenia. I mean, Armenia is understandably angry. Turkey literally killed most of their people, but I don't know why Turkey's angry. It happened. You can't just deny it ever happened. It's not. They're just 1.5 million Armenians? Where? What do you mean? They just disappeared. We didn't do anything to them. Today, it is still very, very, very illegal to talk about the Armenian genocide in Turkey. So that's it. That's the Armenian genocide in a nutshell. That's pretty much the Armenian genocide summed up in my point of view. It's got a lot of views because it's a pretty controversial subject. I'm just laying down the information that I found.